unaware, she inherited 10 billion. After her hidden trillionaire mom died, husband abandons his wife pregnant with twins to marry his wealthy boss. What happened at the will reading later left him shaking. He didn't leave her quietly. He didn't even leave her like a husband. He left her like a man trying to prove a point right there at a family and company gathering with guests watching and phones already raised, while his pregnant wife stood near the doorway still holding her medical bag. Derek Combs took the microphone meant for a toast, looked past Lillian like she wasn't even human, and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "I'm filing for divorce. Effective immediately. She's a liability." The room tilted into silence. Someone gasped. Someone else started recording. No one stopped him. At the edge of the crowd, Lillian Foster, 29, 8 months pregnant, with twins, kept one hand pressed over her stomach like she could shield 2 tiny lives from the humiliation crashing down on her. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes betrayed the shock. She wore a simple dress, no jewelry, nothing that hinted at anything powerful. To them, she was just Derek's soft wife, the woman who didn't understand pressure, the one they whispered was a burden. And standing beside Derek was Marissa Conway, his wealthy boss, the woman he'd soon quietly marry. Perfect hair, perfect smile, hand resting on his back like she'd already moved into Lillian's place. Nearby, Derek's mother watched with approval, as if this public destruction was overdue. What none of them understood, what even Lillian didn't understand, was what her mother's death had already set in motion days earlier, a legal machine moving quietly in the background. A will, a trust, a sealed letter meant for Lillian, a number so huge it didn't sound real. In private finance circles, people had once joked that Josephine was the $1 trillion ghost because the investment structures she quietly controlled moved money measured in trillions. Even though her personal estate, carefully ring-fenced, sat at only $10 billion. But the letter that should have told Lillian everything never reached her hands, because someone inside that house had intercepted it. And, unknown to them, someone outside that house, an investigator Josephine had arranged in advance, was already watching, camera ready, from a dark sedan across the street. So while Derek was busy calling her dead weight and turning her pain into a public show, a different truth was racing toward them, one that would end in a silent room full of lawyers, a will reading, and a sentence that would make Derek's hands start to shake. This isn't just a story about a husband choosing a wealthy boss over his pregnant wife. It's about what happens when a man throws away a woman he never truly understood, right before the world finds out who she really is. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like standing in that crowd while Lillian is erased. When you click that button, you stand with every woman who was mocked, abandoned, and still found a way to rise. Please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The call hit like a punch to the chest. Lillian Foster, 29, 8 months pregnant with twins, froze with her hand on a tiny onesie. The fabric stretched between her fingers like it might tear if she breathed wrong. The voice on the phone was polite, trained, too calm for what it was saying. "Miss Foster, I'm so sorry. This is Dr. Shu from Street Bridget's. Your mother, Josephine Conley. She passed away early this morning." For a second, the room didn't feel real. The walls looked too steady. The air looked too normal. Lillian's stomach tightened, twins shifting, as if they felt her shock before she could name it. She tried to stand, but her knees didn't trust her. She lowered herself to the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on the open drawer of baby clothes, as if folding and sorting could keep life from changing. Josephine was gone. Not sick. Not getting better slowly. Gone. Lillian pressed the phone to her ear, said thank you, because people said thank you on the phone, even when their world had just cracked. The line went quiet, and she sat there staring at her own reflection in the dark screen. She thought of calling her husband right away. Of course she did. That's what wives did, wasn't it? They reached for the person they trusted most. So she went to find Derek Combs. Derek was 33, tall, sharp-featured, always dressed like he was being watched. He worked under a powerful executive, his boss, Marissa Conway, a wealthy woman with a reputation for turning people into stepping stones. Derek wanted her approval the way some men wanted oxygen. When Lillian walked into the living room, Derek was already halfway inside his phone, thumb moving fast, face tight with focus. He didn't notice her tears at first. "My mom," she said. The words came out small. My mom passed away. Derek blinked once, like he'd heard a noise he didn't understand. Then he exhaled, slow and impatient. Not openly cruel. Not yet. But the impatience was there, like a warning sign. Lillian, now, he said, eyes dropping back to the screen. I have a lot going on. The quarter review is next week. Marissa needs these numbers. A lot going on. That's what he called his life these days. She waited for the hug, the hand on her shoulder, the simple, human thing. He gave her none of it. Are you sure? He asked, not in concern, more like he wanted the news to be incorrect so it wouldn't interrupt his day. Lillian nodded. She could feel the twins shifting again, her body reacting to stress with a dull ache that spread across her lower back. Derek didn't see it, or he saw it and chose not to. Okay, he said quickly. We'll deal with it. Call whoever you need to call. I can't miss this call with Marissa. Deal with it. That phrase had become his favorite tool. Like her grief was a package he didn't want to touch. Lillian swallowed because she didn't want to beg for softness. She had learned long ago that begging only made proud people colder. So she nodded like she was fine, because she was good at that. Lillian hadn't grown up dreaming of money. She hadn't grown up even knowing what real money looked like. Josephine Conley raised her in modest rentals, with second-hand furniture that was always clean, and books that were always newer than their clothes. Josephine never wore flashy jewelry. Never talked about success like other parents did. She talked about choices, about safety, about privacy. When Lillian was a teenager, she once asked why they moved houses so often and why her mother never used the same bank twice. Josephine had paused while stirring a pot on the stove, eyes distant like she was listening to a memory. People love you for what they think you need, Josephine said, voice soft but firm. And they resent you for what they think you have. Lillian didn't understand then. She only understood that her mother kept locked drawers and private mail and a calm face that never fully opened. Sometimes, late at night, Josephine would sit at the table with stacks of paper, legal-looking forms, crisp envelopes, signatures. When Lillian walked in, Josephine would slide the papers under a cookbook like it was the most normal thing in the world. Just grown-up stuff, she'd say. Once, Lillian caught a glimpse of a name on a document, Foster Global Trust, and asked if it belonged to family. Josephine smiled like she was hiding a secret inside her teeth. A long story, she said. One you don't need to carry yet. That was Josephine's way. She believed freedom was quiet and safety was silence. What Lillian never knew, couldn't have known, was that Josephine's grown-up stuff wasn't small. Behind Josephine's plain life was a web of private trusts, silent partnerships, and holdings hidden behind legal walls so strong most people didn't even know they existed. Josephine didn't run around calling herself a trillionaire. But the funds and portfolios she had influence over through Foster Global Trust and other vehicles controlled money measured in trillions. People in certain boardrooms called her the trillion-dollar ghost. Her personal estate, though, had been deliberately capped and structured. $10 billion, locked behind conditions and protections. Josephine didn't want a daughter who expected power. She wanted a daughter who deserved it, so she kept Lillian unaware on purpose. And Lillian, trusting her mother, never pushed. She married Derek because he seemed hungry for life, and she believed hunger meant ambition, not danger. She supported his dreams. She made herself smaller when his ego needed space. She told herself love was patience, love was compromise, love was staying. Now she sat on the edge of her bed with Josephine gone, realizing her mother had been her only true protection, whether she understood it or not. Lillian went back to the nursery corner, no fancy theme, no expensive decor, just clean shelves and neatly stacked diapers. She picked up the tiny onesie again and folded it with steady hands that didn't match the shaking inside her chest. She planned which drawer would hold which twin, because if she stopped moving, she might fall apart. Her body ached in that deep, private way pregnancy creates. Every breath felt like work. She didn't complain. She never did. Derek once joked to his friends that she was low maintenance, and they laughed like it was a compliment. He never understood that Lillian had simply learned how to carry weight without asking for applause. She believed marriage was built quietly. She believed loyalty was a daily choice. She believed love didn't need witnesses. Derek moved through the house like a man already gone, checking his phone, adjusting his watch, glancing at his reflection in the window like he was practicing being important. Lillian watched him and felt a strange distance growing, like the space between two people who used to share one life. She mentioned her mother again later, voice softer. I should go through her things, she said. I don't even know where she kept her papers. Derek gave a short sigh. You and your small-town nostalgia, he muttered, half smiling like her grief was a habit that annoyed him. Just do what you have to do. I have a company event coming up. It's important. Marissa's expecting results. An event. Important. Lillian didn't ask who would be there. She didn't ask why his phone never left his hand. She didn't ask why his patience kept shrinking. Because she wanted peace. Because she thought peace could save love. On a shelf in Lillian's bedroom sat a small, outdated phone, never charged properly, never thrown away. It had been Josephine's. Years ago, Josephine had pressed it into her hand. Keep this charged, just in case, she'd said. If there's ever something important about me that you need to know, they'll call this number. Lillian had meant to plug it in. Life got busy. She upgraded her own phone. The old one became a sentimental object instead of the emergency line Josephine wanted it to be. Once, Lillian tried to give it to Derek to recycle. He laughed. Why keep junk? Lillian kept it anyway. She didn't know why. She only knew it felt wrong to let it go. That night, Lillian finally fell asleep with one hand resting over her stomach, as if she could shield the twins from the world simply by touching them. Derek lay beside her, awake. His phone lit up. A message appeared from Marissa Conway, his wealthy boss, the woman whose approval he chased like a lifeline. It read, "We need to talk about your wife." Derek's face tightened. His thumb hovered over the screen. And somewhere, in the quiet machinery of Josephine's hidden life, the first sealed letter from her estate had already been sent out, headed toward the marital address Lillian still thought was safe. The first thing Lillian noticed was Derek's grip, not on her hand, on his phone. He held it like a secret, thumb hovering, eyes darting down whenever it buzzed. And when Lillian asked, softly, if he was okay, Derek's smile came too quickly, too clean. He said he was fine, but his voice carried that thin edge that meant don't ask again, because something had shifted after that message last night. We need to talk about your wife. Lillian didn't know the name attached to it. She didn't know the tone of power behind it. She only knew Derek had gone quiet in a way that felt planned. That evening, he dressed like a man walking into a new life. This is important, he told her while adjusting his jacket in the mirror. It's a company fundraiser and networking night. Appearances matter. Just don't embarrass me, okay? Don't embarrass him. Lillian's face stayed calm, but inside something pressed against her ribs. She was pregnant with twins, carrying 2 heartbeats and still being spoken to like a risk. But she nodded anyway, because her whole life had trained her to keep peace even when it cost her dignity. She chose a simple dress, clean, soft, comfortable. No glitter, no loudness. She wasn't trying to compete. She wasn't trying to be seen. She only wanted to stand beside her husband and feel like they were still a team. But the moment they walked in, Lillian understood. This room was not built for teams. It was built for winners. People wore confidence like perfume. Laughter was practiced. Smiles were weapons. Cameras were everywhere, small ones, phone ones, hidden ones angled the way they always angled, toward status. And right there, in the center of it, was Marissa Conway. Marissa Conway was 38, Derek's boss, and the kind of wealthy executive who didn't need to brag because the room already bragged for her. She had the calm posture of someone who'd never been told no in a way that mattered. Her role wasn't just boss. She controlled Derek's career path, his promotions, his reputation, his hunger. And Derek, starving for validation, treated her approval like it was proof he was finally becoming someone. Marissa never rushed. She didn't need to. She stood exactly where cameras naturally angled toward her, champagne glass untouched, face composed. Power didn't shout from her, it settled, heavy and quiet, as if it owned the air. When Derek arrived with Lillian, Marissa's eyes flicked to Lillian the way people check labels. First the dress simple, clean, no designer logo begging to be admired. Then Lillian's body pregnant, heavy with twins, moving slower. Marissa's smile didn't widen. It sharpened. Marissa greeted Derek first. "Derek," she said warmly. Professionally, like a woman offering him a future. Her hand touched his arm, just a half second too long. Derek straightened as if her fingers had plugged him into electricity. Then Marissa turned to Lillian. Her eyes traveled over Lillian's face with a pleasant, assessing look, like Lillian was a resume someone had already decided not to read. "So this is her," Marissa said. Not a question, not curiosity, a conclusion. Lillian offered her hand because that was what decent people did. Marissa looked at the hand and let a beat of silence pass, just long enough for the message to land. Then Marissa's gaze slipped to the chair beside Derek, Lillian's chair. And Marissa sat there. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was surgical. For a fraction of a second, Derek hesitated. Lillian saw it, the twitch of uncertainty, the flicker of should I, before ambition crushed it. Derek let it happen. He didn't offer Lillian his seat. He didn't say, "That's my wife's place." He simply turned toward Marissa, smiling like he'd been chosen. Lillian stood. A few people noticed. A few people pretended not to. Someone whispered to someone else. Phones angled slightly upward, screens glowing, ready to capture humiliation like entertainment. Lillian felt heat rise into her face, but she kept her posture steady. She could do steady. She had done steady her whole life. Marissa leaned toward Derek and said something low, something that made him laugh. Lillian didn't hear the words, but she heard the meaning. "You don't belong where power sits." Conversations moved like rivers around Lillian. People spoke over her, around her, through her, like she was glass. When she tried to add a small comment, something polite, safe, Derek cut her off with a tight smile. "You wouldn't understand this part," he said, voice carrying just enough to sting. It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of humiliation that made people question if they were imagining it. Marissa watched, enjoyed. Her eyes held Lillian the way hunters hold prey. Calm, patient, certain. Later, as executives discussed budgets and streamlining, Marissa casually dropped words like audits and cash flow with the ease of a woman who knew how to make numbers sound like morality. "Sometimes," Marissa said, "liabilities disguise themselves as loyalty." Her eyes landed on Lillian's stomach when she said it. Lillian's hand instinctively pressed to her belly, protective. Two small kicks answered, like the twins were reminding her she wasn't alone. Derek didn't notice. Or he noticed and didn't care. Dinner was announced. People flowed toward tables with assigned seats. Lillian assumed she'd be guided to sit beside her husband, but a young assistant approached with a polite smile that wasn't really polite. "Ma'am," she said softly, "could you stand here for a moment? We're adjusting seating for senior staff and partners. Stand here, not asked positioned." Lillian looked toward Derek. Surely he would speak up now. Surely he would say, "That's my wife." Derek didn't even turn. Marissa did. Marissa's gaze said everything Derek wouldn't. "See? Even he knows where you belong." Lillian stood with the assistants while plates were placed for everyone else. She watched laughter spill across tables, watched Derek lean toward Marissa, watched the space beside him remain empty like a statement. No one defended her. Silence became complicity. Later, Marissa raised her glass. The room quieted. Phones lifted slightly. Attention gathered around her like gravity. "To clarity," Marissa said, "to efficiency, and to the courage to let go of what no longer serves growth." People murmured approval. Smiles. Clinks of glass. Marissa's eyes never left Lillian. Derek clapped first. Lillian didn't. Her fingers curled at her side, steady on the outside, trembling underneath. It wasn't just jealousy she felt. It was recognition. Recognition of something her mother once warned her about, how certain people could look at you and decide you were disposable. As the night ended, Derek walked ahead of Lillian, already absorbed in conversation, already moving like she wasn't attached to him. Marissa drifted close, passing Lillian with the scent of expensive confidence. She brushed by as if it was an accident, then murmured almost kindly, almost like advice, "Motherhood makes women smaller. You'll see." Lillian's breath caught. Not fear, recognition. Because in that moment she understood. Marissa wasn't just flirting with Derek. Marissa was studying Lillian, planning around her. And Derek, her husband, was letting it happen. When they got home, Derek didn't ask if Lillian was okay. He went straight to his phone. Lillian stood in the doorway, watching him type with the urgency of a man protecting something precious. Then she saw the screen light up again. Marissa's name. Another message. Short, cold. A command, not a conversation. Tomorrow, I'll come by the house.